The RICS mandatory competencies can seem overwhelming for anybody working towards their APC. There are 11 mandatory competencies in total which cover a really wide range of topics on everything from sustainability to client care. So the following questions and model answers are really designed to cover all of them in detail so you are fully prepared for your final assessment interview. However, if you want to focus your revision on one competency in particular, you can use the timestamps listed in the description below. Whilst I can't claim to be an expert or an APC assessor, I'm only speaking from my own experience of the APC and having helped a number of colleagues pass their APC over the last 6 years, and I really hope you find this Q&A useful. So before we go into the main Q&A practice, let's first of all explain when the mandatory questions will come up during your final assessment interview. You can see the interview starts with a brief introduction by the chairperson, and this then leads into your case study presentation. Following your presentation, there are then 10 minutes of Q&A around your case study, followed by 25 minutes of Q&A on the core competencies. This then goes into 10 minutes of Q&A on the mandatory competencies. This is the section that we'll be focusing on today, highlighted in green. There are 11 mandatory competencies in total, which may seem overwhelming, but remember the majority of these are level 1 and require background knowledge and awareness only. The level 2 questions that do require practical experience include topics such as health and safety and communication, which aren't too difficult for you to demonstrate. Also remember that most of the questioning you face during your interview will be based on your own submission, as the APC is personal to you and your own experience, so please don't feel overwhelmed by the mandatory competencies. If you are unsure about how to achieve each of the competencies or how to populate your documentation, I did do a separate video on this which I'd really recommend watching. So without further ado, let's take a look at some Q&A around the mandatory competencies. The first mandatory competency we'll take a look at is client care. And when answering these questions, you should remember that the RICS expects all its members to deliver a high standard of service to their clients in the public's interest. And this competency is all about ensuring that as a chartered surveyor, you know what's expected to maintain the highest standards of service possible. This includes being aware of the RICS rules on complaints handling and the handling of clients' money. So the first question we'll take a look at under the client care competency is, prior to working with a new client, what pre-appointment checks would you undertake? And to address this, we can say that firstly, we would ensure that we were sufficiently knowledgeable, skilled and competent to carry out the work required. We would also check for conflicts of interest in line with the RICS professional guidance on conflicts of interest. We would undertake anti-money laundering checks in line with the Anti-Money Laundering Directive and RICS professional statement. We could also ensure that we had sufficient professional indemnity insurance cover in place prior to the instruction being undertaken. And finally, we could say that on receipt of a verbal instruction, we would look to formalise the engagement in writing with issuing and signing off on written terms of engagement. The next question we'll take a look at is, when setting up a new practice, what procedures would you put in place to ensure that good client care was being provided? And to address this, we can say that processes for formalising terms of engagement and clear communication lines with the client would be put in place, including confirming timescales, resourcing adjustments, and obtaining any information required from the client. We could also say that we would set up procedures for obtaining regular client feedback and ensuring that this is acted upon, for example by holding monthly client performance reviews. Thirdly, we could say that we would develop strategies for taking part in business development activities in order to retain existing clients and also generate new business. We could make reference to putting in place procedures to keep client information confidential and using non-disclosure agreements to protect client confidentiality if required. We could also say that we would report to clients using agreed and consistently formatted documentation that has been tailored to meet the client's requirements. We may also be asked a very high-level question on our understanding of why client care is so important, and to address this kind of question, we could firstly say that surveying practices that provide excellent client care are likely to retain existing clients and develop new business leads by receiving positive testimonials. A failure to provide good client care is likely to lead to client dissatisfaction, complaints, and professional indemnity insurance claims for professional negligence. Formal complaints and insurance claims can be costly and can result in a stressful working environment, reduce staff performance, and also be very time consuming. Complaints and claims should be avoided with diligence, manageable workloads, and resource planning with well-developed procedures for obtaining and acting on client feedback. The next question we'll take a look at is a scenario-based question on how we would act on receipt of a formal written complaint from the client. And to address this, we could say that firstly, we would look to arrange a call with the client as soon as possible to notify them that we have received the complaint and are working to rectify the issues they are experiencing. We would also need to issue a copy of the firm's complaints handling procedure for reference, and following this we would then report the complaint with all relevant details to the senior appointed person or designated complaints handler. We would also need to be very careful to notify our professional indemnity insurers in line with our policy requirements as soon as possible. And to follow up on rectifying the complaint, we could say that we would arrange a meeting with the client to take on board their feedback and address any areas of concern by introducing appropriate procedures if required. If we were unable to resolve the complaint, this would then need to be referred to the RICS independent redress mechanism. The next question we'll take a look at is a very high-level question on our understanding of what a complaint is and why this is a very serious area for surveyors. And to address this, we can say that a complaint is a statement that a situation is unsatisfactory or unacceptable to the client. Complaints can either be made formally, in writing, or verbally. And one of the reasons why it's so important to take complaints seriously is that the RICS requires these to be handled in line with their complaints handling procedure. Practices also have an obligation to notify professional indemnity insurers, and in the worst case, complaints can result in a loss of clients, reputational damage, and professional indemnity insurance claims. So obviously this is a very serious topic area for surveyors. We may also receive another high-level question on our understanding of the term duty of care. And to address this, we can say that a duty of care is to ensure that another party does not suffer harm or loss that can arise as a result of a breach of contractual obligations or tort of negligence. General forms of appointment will include contractual duties to perform services with reasonable skill and care that is of a standard expected of a reasonably competent professional. However, if the appointment is made on the basis of specialist capabilities, then the duty of care expected would be to the standard of a competent specialist rather than a general practitioner operating in that field. In the absence of any contractual obligations, tort of negligence can be applied, which relies on the courts applying relevant aspects of common law to determine the duty of care that is owed. We may also be asked another high-level question on our understanding of the difference between clients and customers. And to address this, we can say that customers are best defined as an individual who is purchasing goods and services from a company. They are typically one-time transactions, whereas a client refers to a person who looks for professional service from the business. A customer engaging in a transaction with a company will not have the same relationship as a client who engages in an ongoing relationship with the company. This means that both sides work on long-term goals and long-standing relationships, plus the business has to focus on creating a strong bond with the client in order to retain them as a client. This means that both sides work on long-term goals and long-standing relationships where the business has to focus on creating a strong bond with the client in order to retain their business. With client care being so important to the RICS, we may also be asked a question on how we would conduct ourselves when acting for or working with a new client. And to address this, we could say that we would be sure to be friendly, engaging, and enthusiastic. We would be inquisitive about key challenges the client may be facing, and we would also ensure that at all times we would be well presented, polite, conscientious, and respectful in order to build a long-standing relationship with the client. We may also be asked a question on our understanding of the term soft landings, and to address this, we can say that soft landings refer to strategies designed to make an easy transition from the construction phase to the occupation stage of a project. The overriding aim of soft landings is to realise optimal operational performance and ensure that the end user of the project can operate effectively in the built asset that has been delivered. We may also be asked a level 2 question that requires us to reflect on our own experience here, and that is to provide an overview of our own internal quality management procedures. And to address this, we could make reference firstly to a peer review process where documentation and reports are checked by colleagues prior to them being issued to the client to ensure high standards of quality and service. We would also make reference to a standardised format of documentation so that this is professionally formatted and consistent for the client. We could make reference to authorisation and signature processes being in place prior to release and issue of documentation. We could make reference to accessible file storage systems so that latest information in relation to the project is always on hand for any short-term absence of staff and to minimise any loss of important information. Procedures for absence of staff and staff leavers should also be in place to ensure that information is handed over appropriately. We could make reference to internal and external audits, lessons learned workshops, and client performance feedback. Another level 2 question we may be asked in relation to this area is what is your firm's procedure for obtaining client feedback? And this is obviously very specific to your own firm's procedures. However, you could reference things such as client performance reviews undertaken every 3 months and at key project milestones, the use of key performance indicators, regular day-to-day informal communication with the client, and also holding lessons learned workshops at completion of the scheme or again at key milestones within the project. A follow-on question we may receive here is what is meant by the term KPIs, and to address this we can say that a key performance indicator is a measurable value that demonstrates how effectively a company is achieving key business objectives. Organisations use KPIs at multiple levels to evaluate their success at reaching targets, and high-level KPIs may focus on the overall performance of the business, while low-level KPIs may focus on processes in departments such as sales, marketing and HR. We may also be asked a question on our understanding of the term client money, and to address this we could say that client money refers to money of any currency, whether in the form of cash, cheques, draft or electronic transfers. We could also say that this is where money is received on behalf of another person or another company that is not immediately due or payable. And client money excludes fees paid in advance for professional work. The next competency we'll take a look at is business planning, and the first question we'll take a look at under the business planning competency is what procedures does your firm adopt to ensure that they are profitable? And to address this we can first of all reference the use of timesheets, resource planners, fee and cost reconciliation tools, project reviews, yearly performance reviews, ongoing team meetings, director one-to-one catch-ups, implementation of a business development strategy, and project pipeline monitoring. We can also say that the timesheets can be used to record expenditure against each project, and that can quickly be compared against the fee income to determine the profitability of each working project. Another question you may be asked is what issues would a company experience with a high staff turnover? And to address this, we could refer to increased recruitment costs, increased training costs, inconsistent production and performance, poor staff morale, lower customer satisfaction and reputational damage, a loss of customers and therefore repeat business, higher operating expenditure, and reduced profitability. You may also be asked a question on your knowledge of fee-earning members of staff versus non-fee earners. And to address this, we can say that examples of fee earners would be staff members such as quantity surveyors, architects, project managers, building surveyors, valuers, and commercial real estate consultants, whereas non-fee earners would include administration support staff, business development managers, and IT support staff. We may also be asked a question on our understanding of the term investment appraisal, and to address this we can say that an investment appraisal is used to determine whether a business or project would generate the required levels of return and be considered financially viable. The investment appraisal would typically consider the rate of return, the payback period, and the net present value. Another common question we may be asked is what components would you identify within a business plan? And to address this we could first of all reference the executive summary, the marketing strategy, vision and mission statements, products and services, reference to the management team and organisational structure, any financial forecasts, responsibilities and targets, and a SWOT analysis and pest analysis. A follow-on question we may be asked in relation to the business plan is how a business plan can help a company remain profitable. And to address this, we can say that the business plan will assist with securing new funding and investment. It's there to grow existing client. It can also result in growth of existing client base and project pipelines. It can highlight key business objectives, assist with responding to change. It can also result in growth of market share, support accurate forecasting and budgeting, and also allow for resource planning. Another question we may be asked under business planning is what is a business model? And to address this, we can say that a business model is a strategy implemented by an organisation to generate revenue and make a profit from its operations. The business model may detail the following components: for example, the products or services being offered to the client base, the business niche or sector being operated in, any target clients and customers, and the route to market entry, including costs associated with bringing the product or service to the target market. And another follow-on question we may be asked is what is meant by the term business strategy? And to address this, we can say that a business strategy outlines the actions and decisions a company plans to take to reach its business goals and objectives. The strategy will often guide top-level executives as well as departments on what activities should and should not be undertaken in order to execute the business goals and objectives. The next competency we'll take a look at is accounting principles and procedures. And the first question we'll take a look at under this competency is please explain your understanding of the term tax depreciation. And to address this, we can say that tax depreciation is where the declining value of an asset is offset against the company's taxable profit. The depreciation in value can be recorded as an expense in order to reduce the amount of taxable income. This can be applied on things such as plant, tools, vehicles, computers, furniture and buildings. We may also be asked a question on our understanding of the term overheads, and to address this we can say that overheads means the operating costs of the business that are incurred on an ongoing basis. Overheads can be both fixed or variable. For example, fixed overheads could take the form of rent on office buildings or building insurance costs that do not change each month, whereas variable overheads tend to fluctuate depending on the activity of the business, for example delivery or utility charges. The next question we'll take a look at is what is an escrow account? And to address this, we can say that escrow accounts are contractual agreements that are used as financial instruments within a transaction. The asset or currency being transferred between two primary parties is held by an intermediary third party. The currency being exchanged is held by the third party until each of the two primary parties have met their contractual obligations, allowing the money to then be transferred. This is often used by mortgage lenders when completing on the buying or selling of real estate being exchanged. The next question we'll take a look at is please name the three different types of accounting ratios. And to address this, we could first of all reference liquidity ratios, and these consider an organisation's ability to pay their debt obligations and assess its margin of safety by looking at the number of metrics including their operating costs against short-term debts. We could also make reference to profitability ratios, which assess an organisation's ability to generate profits from its sales operations and shareholding equity. The ratio indicates how efficiently a company is generating its profit. And finally, we need to mention gearing ratios, which compare capital within the company against its debts. And the gearing is a measure of a company's financial leverage and sets out what proportion of the firm's activities are funded by shareholders versus its creditor funds. We may also be asked a high-level question on our understanding of why businesses need to keep company accounts. And to address this, we can say that they are used to record and measure a company's profitability. We can also say that they're there to assist with tax calculation, including calculating any taxable deductions. We'd need to say that legislation often requires companies to keep accurate accounts, and they're also there to support business growth by identifying profitable operations whilst also allowing management to minimise any loss-making activities. The next question we'll take a look at is what is financial leverage? And to address this, we can say that financial leverage is a concept of using borrowed funds in the form of debt to enhance business operations and increase the company's profitability and rates of return. In the event that the rate of return invested via borrowed funds is higher than the interest on those funds, then more profit can be generated in the concept of financial leverage. The next question we'll take a look at is what are capital allowances? And to address this, we can say that capital allowances allow taxpayers to gain tax relief by using their expenditure to be deducted from their taxable income. But we should note that the expenditure used to lower taxable income is only allowed within certain categories of costs. For example, plant and machinery, integral parts of structures and buildings, for example lifts and escalators, research and development costs, and the cost of obtaining any patents. And the next question we'll take a look at is what is the difference between a current asset versus a fixed asset? And to address this, we can say that current assets can normally be converted into cash within one financial year and are regarded as assets that allow day-to-day operations of the business to continue. Examples may include any money owed to the company following sales of its products or services, inventory and prepaid expenses, whereas fixed assets typically cannot be converted into cash within 1 year, and these kind of assets are recorded on a company's balance sheet as fixed assets that the company owns on a long-term basis. For example, any vehicles, office furniture, machinery, buildings and land. And we'll now take a look at some questions under the conflict avoidance, management and dispute resolution competency. The first question we'll take a look at is a very high level question asking our understanding of what procedures can be adopted in order to avoid disputes. And to address this kind of question, we could first of all make reference to clear contract documentation in terms of engagement, and effective communication procedures between all parties, accurate record keeping such as professional diaries and site project meeting minutes, issuing written correspondence to confirm actions and decisions taken, including any site instructions, following company and contractual procedures and not deviating away from these, and following RICS standards and professional guidance statements. We may also be asked a level 2 question reflecting on our own experience of some of the common causes of disputes, and this will obviously be personal to your own experience, but we could make reference here to errors and conflicting information within tender documentation, poorly defined change control procedures, a lack of knowledge or understanding of contractual obligations, errors within the contract, poor contract administration, poor quality of workmanship, delays to any payments or non-payment of claims, and finally, non-conformity of contractual obligations. We may also be asked a question on our understanding of the term or acronym TCC, and to address this, we can say that TCC stands for the Technology and Construction Court, and this is a court specialising in construction and technology disputes. TCC cases are governed by civil procedure rules, and suitable claims assessed within the TCC would include any building or construction disputes, enforcement of cases adjudicated under the Construction Act, engineering disputes, and claims relating to professional services such as engineering, surveying, and accountancy. We may also be asked a question on our understanding of the term expert witness. An expert witness is an expert in their particular field who applies their knowledge, experience, and specialist training to assist the courts or parties involved within a dispute. They will provide their expert opinion in legal cases and disputes to assist the courts in arriving at a sound and reasoned decision. They are usually called upon in cases that require technical, scientific, or industry knowledge that only an expert in that field would possess, and this could be on complex issues such as boundary wall disputes, contractual disputes, insurance and injury claims. We'll now take a look at some questions on the various forms of dispute resolution, starting with firstly mediation. And to address this, we can say that mediation is a form of dispute resolution that is entered into by consent of both parties. A third-party mediator is appointed to resolve the dispute in question and assists in a supported negotiation to reach an acceptable outcome. Mediation is an informal process allowing parties to adopt a flexible approach in reaching an outcome, allowing relationships to be maintained. The mediator has no legal authority or power to instruct either party to do anything, and the process is not binding. We may also be asked a question on our understanding of conciliation, and to address this, we can say that conciliation is used by mutual consent of both parties under the ICE procedure, and there is no right of either party to object to the appointed conciliator. The process adopted is very similar to mediation in a supported style of negotiation. The main difference here is that in the event negotiations break down, the conciliator will prepare a recommendation setting out how the dispute should be resolved. If neither party objects to the recommendation within 1 month of the ruling, then this becomes the final and binding decision. The next question we'll take a look at is what is adjudication? And to address this, we can say that adjudication is a statutory procedure provided by a third-party independent adjudicator who is selected by the parties in dispute. The parties can select the expert or highlight characteristics that they need to offer, and the appointed expert can act in a investigative manner. There are no legal submissions or examinations of evidence, and adjudication is often less expensive than litigation and arbitration procedures. The outcome issued by the expert is not supported by statute, with the expert's powers limited to the confines of the contract. The expert outcome must be enforced by court proceedings if appealed. We'll now take a look at some questions under the communication and negotiation competency, and the first question we'll take a look at is a very high level question, and that is, can you please define what communication is? And to address this, we can simply say that this is the imparting or exchanging of information by either speaking, writing, or using some other medium. We may also be asked a question on our views on the form of email communication, and to address this, we can say that we always need to take great care when sending emails. It's very easy to release sensitive information to incorrect parties, and we need to take extra care to double check the recipients prior to issue. We can also say that even though emails appear to be less formal than written letters, they can still have the ability to create contracts and form written instructions. The next question we'll take a look at is another very high level question, checking our understanding of the term negotiation. And to address this, we can say that negotiations are discussions which are held to reach a compromise or agreement. Parties, through an informal or facilitated negotiation process, can agree to settle a dispute. Concessions and non-negotiable items of each party are discussed, and negotiations can be finalised either in line-by-line detail or at a high level. The next question we'll take a look at is what would you do following a negotiation meeting where a verbal agreement was made? And to address this, we would need to say that we would look to formalise the verbal agreement as soon as possible. This would be achieved through issue of written correspondence setting out what was discussed and agreed at the meeting. Within the written communication, we would request that the other party confirm agreement by written reply, and if confirmation was not received, we would need to follow up with a verbal call reminding the other party that confirmation in writing is still required. The next question we'll take a look at is dependent on your own experience and views, and that is, in your view, what makes a successful negotiation? And some ideas that we could use to address this kind of question could be that we would ensure good preparation and discussion prior to the meeting with the client about the concessions and non-negotiable items. Good record keeping and presentation of written instructions, cost of breakdowns that have been received and recorded during the project can also be presented. The meeting should be held in a calm environment where both parties are given the opportunity to speak without interruption. We could also utilise the use of regular comfort breaks and time to review discussions in private with the client, particularly in heated or more sensitive parts of the discussions. Following the agreements made within the meeting, we would need to formalise these in writing as soon as possible in order to avoid any confusion around what has been agreed. We'll now take a look at some questions under the sustainability competency. And the first question we'll take a look at under this competency is what are the most common environmental issues experienced on construction sites? And to address this, we could first of all make reference to the risk of land degradation, and usually large projects entail extensive land disturbance which makes the soil vulnerable to erosion, and soil removed may become airborne and create dust problems or be carried into natural waterways. There is also a great risk to flora and fauna, where the biological environment includes various species of animals and plant life and their habitats, and these can be severely damaged by construction activities. We could also make reference to the risks of water pollution, air pollution, land contamination, noise and vibrations, high energy usage and emissions of CO2, high wastage production into landfill, and also the release of dangerous gases and materials. The next question we'll take a look at is what regulations and codes of practice are you aware of that affect sustainability within construction? To address this, we could make reference to the Agricultural Land Act, the Building Act, which enforces the building regulations, the Clean Air Act, which gives local authorities power to control air pollution, the Climate Change Act, which is a legally binding commitment to cut emissions and greenhouse gases, the Energy Act, where it's now unlawful to rent out residential or business premises that do not reach a minimum energy efficiency standard, the Environmental Protection Act, which sets out regulations regarding the controlled disposal of household, industrial and commercial waste, the Flood and Water Management Act, and the Wildlife and Countryside Act. We may also be asked a question on what procedures our own firm implements in order to promote sustainability, and to address this will obviously be specific to your own company, but we could make reference to recycling of cardboard, paper and plastics, the use of energy efficient lighting systems, for example motion sensors, the use of energy efficient equipment, for example LED lamps and energy efficient monitors, the use of electric company vehicles, cycle to work schemes, reducing printing by using cloud-based systems, charitable contributions to tree planting and environmental programs, and the sign up to green initiatives and codes of practice, for example using office space with high APC and BREEAM ratings. The next question we'll take a look at is checking our understanding of the Paris Agreement, and to address this we can say that the Paris Agreement is a legally binding international treaty concerning climate change. It was adopted by nearly every nation and came into effect in 2016. The goal of the Paris Agreement is to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius whilst targeting levels below 1.5 degrees Celsius when compared to pre-industrial levels. The agreement commits all major emitting countries to cut their climate pollution, and it also creates a framework for the transparent monitoring and reporting of each individual country's progress. The next question we'll take a look at is checking our understanding of sustainable building methods that are available. And to address this, we could make reference to use of recycled materials such as reclaimed timber, recycled tiles and plastics, the use of ground source heat pumps and air source heat pumps, the use of solar panels, wind turbines, solar shading to prevent solar gain, rainwater harvesting, green roofs, and automated building systems, for example lighting sensors. The next question we'll take a look at is checking our understanding of the term green roofs. To address this, we can say that a green roof is a roof covering that is partially or completely covered with vegetation that is placed over a waterproof membrane. Additional layers such as drainage layers, irrigation systems, or root barriers may also be placed over the membrane, and rooftop ponds are an alternative form of green roof which are used to treat grey water. The vegetation, soil, drainage layers, root barriers and irrigation systems are typically the key components of a green roof. Advantages of green roofs are that they absorb rainwater, provide extra insulation, increase biodiversity by providing habitats for wildlife, and are also aesthetically pleasing whilst lowering urban air temperatures. The next question we'll take a look at is what are photovoltaics and how do they work? And to address this, we can say that photovoltaics allow the conversion of sunlight into electricity. Sunlight contains energy known as photons, and when photons hit solar modules within the solar panel, they cause electrons to flow through the bottom layer. The movement of electrons generates electricity that flows to an inverter, and the inverter converts DC electricity into AC that is then used to power the building. The next question is testing our understanding of the term soakaways and how they work, and to address this we can say that soakaways offer a means of surface water drainage attenuation. They consist of large holes or pits that receive surface water from a drainage pipe, and the soakaway allows the collected surface water to gradually infiltrate through the soil. The next question we'll take a look at is testing our understanding of the term carbon neutral, and to address this we can say that carbon neutrality is to have a balance between the carbon emitted and the carbon absorbed from the atmosphere in carbon sinks. This is an important measure of the impact that businesses and projects have on their environment and global warming. And to date, no artificial carbon sinks are able to remove carbon from the atmosphere at the levels required to offset global warming. The next question we'll take a look at is checking our understanding of the term solar gain, and to address this we can say that solar gain is a name given to the increase in temperature within a space, object or structure due to solar radiation. A building can retain this solar gain by having high thermal mass, or it can avoid it by using reflective materials and insulation. We may also be asked a follow-on question to this, checking our understanding of how solar gain can be managed within buildings, and to address this we can say that we would limit the size and area of openings such as doors and windows. We could use solar shading or orientating doors and windows away from direct sunlight, and use reflective materials on the glass and building fabric. We could also use insulating walls and roof spaces to prevent indirect solar gains into the building. The next question we'll take a look at is how does a ground source heat pump work? And to address this, we can say that heat from the ground is absorbed at low temperature into a fluid inside of a loop or pipe buried underground. The fluid then passes through a compressor that raises it to a high temperature, which can then heat water for the heating and hot water circuits of the building. The cooled ground loop fluid passes back into the ground where it absorbs further energy from the ground in a continuous process as long as heating is required. We may also be asked a question of our understanding of the term SUDS, and to address this we can say that the term SUDS stands for Sustainable Drainage Systems, and these allow surface water to be managed as close to source as possible by allowing surface water to infiltrate into the ground where it is collected and then managed passively. SUDS will slow down surface water runoff by allowing it to infiltrate and soak into natural contours and landscapes. And SUDS are considered to be environmentally friendly as they do not rely on the manufacture of plastic or clay drainage components, and instead utilise natural vegetation and material to absorb surface water. SUDS rely on a number of management practices, controls and strategies to efficiently and sustainably drain surface water whilst minimising pollution and managing the impact on local bodies of water. And this is an example of a SUDS design where we can see that natural vegetation is being used to manage surface water runoff by the use of vegetation, natural contours and landscapes. We may also be asked a question of our understanding of the benefits of a BREEAM certified building. And to address this, we can say that BREEAM buildings help clients to benefit from lowering the running costs of their built assets and minimising the impact on the environment through consideration at planning, design, construction and operation phases. Other benefits include greater marketability to building tenants through lower running costs and creating desirable places to work and live. A higher building value and positive PR message is also achieved through the increased sustainability of the building, particularly when achieving BREEAM Excellent and Very Good ratings. We may also be asked a question of our understanding of rainwater harvesting and what benefits this can bring. And to address this, we can say that it reduces the need for imported water. It promotes both water and energy conservation, whilst also improving the quality and quantity of groundwater. It can also be used to achieve improved BREEAM compliance, whilst lowering operational costs and reducing environmental impact. We may also be asked a question of our understanding of the term EPC, and to address this we can say that this stands for Energy Performance Certificates, which were introduced in 2007 and are now a legal requirement for a building to be sold, let or constructed, and once obtained an EPC is valid for 10 years. The most efficient built assets typically have the lowest fuel bills and are in Band A. EPCs are rated on a scale of A to G. The energy efficiency of the built asset along with potential improvements are listed, and the EPC will also show the amount of CO2 emissions produced by the property in tonnes and will also advise on the amount that this could be reduced by. We may also be asked a question of our understanding of the sustainable initiatives being undertaken by the RICS, and to address this we could firstly make reference to SKA ratings, which encourage green codes of practice for commercial properties. More recently we can refer to the fact that the RICS have now launched the Value the Planet campaign and committed to forming a climate change expert panel in order to implement the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. And we could also say that the RICS has launched a responsible business report filled with solutions for companies to operate in a greener capacity regardless of a firm's size, and this includes introducing higher recycling rates and reducing energy, transport and water use where possible. We may also be asked a question on the procedures that we implement in order to promote sustainability. And to address this we can say that we're always sure to print only when necessary. We could make reference to car sharing, use of energy efficient equipment, recycling, cycle to work schemes, being careful to minimise waste, avoiding the use of plastic bottles where possible, and the use of cloud-based sharing systems over physically stored files. We'll now take a look at some Q&A under the data management competency, and the first question we'll take a look at is what are the benefits of cloud-based storage systems? And to address this question we could firstly say that information is backed up securely on encrypted servers, and accessibility of information can be managed via online settings seamlessly between each member of the team, and cloud systems are often cheaper than the cost of physically storing and managing files, and it's also convenient to send and share files online instead of mailing physical copies. Cloud systems are more environmentally friendly and multiple users can access the same documentation. Documents and folder systems can also be synchronized, allowing multiple people to work on the same documents seamlessly. The next question we'll take a look at is testing our understanding of the term non-disclosure agreement. And to address this, we can say that non-disclosure agreements are used to protect against the disclosure or sharing of any confidential data. Prior to the confidential data being shared with the recipient, clients will typically request that the recipient signs up to an NDA or non-disclosure agreement. They're often used when confidential, sensitive, innovative or intellectual property information is being shared to prevent this information being used by competitors. The next question we'll take a look at again centres around confidentiality of client data, and this is if two separate departments within your firm were working for two rival companies, how would you ensure that client sensitive data was managed? And to address this, we can firstly say that we would make the client aware of the risks associated and how this was proposed to be managed within the firm to ensure that they were happy with this. We would make them aware and check their understanding of the conflict of interest. We would also need to seek a letter of instruction to continue before continuing to act on their behalf. Some of the procedures we could put in place to negate any sensitive information being shared between the teams would include exclusivity of staff, the use of non-disclosure agreements, single communication lines going back into the client, separate working locations between both teams, and the use of secure document storage systems. The next question we'll take a look at is checking our understanding of the key persons outlined within GDPR. And firstly, we would need to reference the controller. And the controller is a natural person or legal entity that determines the purposes and means of processing of personal data. For example, when processing an employee's personal data, the employer is considered to be the controller of the information. We could also make reference to the processor, and this is the natural person or legal entity that processes personal data on behalf of the controller. For example, a call centre acting on behalf of its client would be considered to be a processor. We could also make reference to the DPO or Data Protection Officer, and the Data Protection Officer is a leadership role required by EU under GDPR, and this role exists within companies that process the personal data of EU citizens. The DPO is responsible for overseeing the data protection approach, strategy and its implementation. The next question we'll take a look at is what are the 8 individual rights under GDPR? And these include firstly the right to be informed, where all organisations must be completely transparent in how they are using personal data. The right of access, where individuals will have the right to know exactly what information is held about them and how it is being processed. The right to rectification, and the right to erasure, which is also known as the right to be forgotten. And this refers to an individual's rights to have their personal data deleted or removed without the need for a specific reason. The right to restrict processing. The right to data portability, which allows individuals to retain and reuse their personal data for their own purpose. The right to object. And the right of automated decision making and profiling. And finally, we may also be asked a question on our understanding on the procedures that companies can put in place in order to achieve GDPR compliance. And to address this, we could first of all say that we would raise awareness across the business, we would audit all personal data, update our privacy notice, review procedures supporting individuals' rights, identify and document companies' legal basis for processing personal data under GDPR. And we'd also need to review how we seek, obtain and record consent. We'll now take a look at the diversity, inclusion and teamworking competency. And the first question we'll take a look at under this competency is testing our understanding of the term workplace diversity. And to address this, we can say that diversity in the workplace relates to the acceptance and inclusion of employees from all backgrounds. We could also say that ensuring diversity in the workplace is an important asset of an organisation as it acknowledges the individual strengths of each employee and the potential they bring to the business. We may also be asked a follow-on question to this, checking our understanding of the advantages of a diverse team. And to address this, we can firstly reference increased productivity, where a diversity of talent will result in a broader range of skills amongst the team and result in increased productivity. We could also reference increased creativity, where differing skill sets and perspectives within the team will increase the chance of generating solutions to workplace problems. Improved cultural awareness, where a diverse range of cultures within the workplace allows companies to operate more effectively within a global market. For example, having access to an employee who speaks Mandarin will be a great asset for a company operating in China. We could also say that this adds to a company's positive reputation, and companies that have a diverse workplace are often perceived as better employers. Potential employees want an employer who accepts and is tolerant of all backgrounds and who treats their employees fairly. The next question we'll take a look at is please explain your understanding of inclusion within the workplace. And to address this, we can say that inclusion within the workplace is creating an environment and culture where all company employees feel like they belong within the organisation. This results in every employee being comfortable to voice their opinions and where no one person feels excluded on the basis of their identity. Another question we may be asked under this competency is what is the term unconscious bias? And to address this, we can say that unconscious bias refers to the associations and assumptions that a person may have about somebody solely because of their race, gender, or disability. These judgments are made without conscious awareness, and these automatic assumptions and stereotypes are a major contributor to a lack of workplace diversity. We'll now take a look at some questions that fall under the health and safety competency. And the first question we'll take a look at is please explain your understanding of the term HSE. And to address this, we can say that HSE stands for the Health and Safety Executive, and the HSE is the UK national authority for managing work-related health, safety and illness issues. The HSE acts in the public interests to reduce work-related injuries and incidents, and their aim is to protect people's health and safety by ensuring that risks are properly managed. They also support businesses to change and adapt in order to remain compliant with occupational health and safety legislation. The next question we'll take a look at is what is the Considerate Constructors Scheme? And to address this, we can say that this is a non-for-profit independent organisation founded in 1997, and this was to improve the image of the construction industry. Considerate Constructors encourages contractors and their supply chain to implement best practice procedures for site operations and engagement with surrounding communities. Initiatives include promoting cleanliness of building sites, minimisation of noise pollution, and engagement with local communities. Another question we may be asked is what kind of incidents are the causation of most deaths within the construction industry? And to address this, we need to reference that falls from height cause the most number of deaths within construction. We may also be asked a question checking our understanding of the cause of most long-term health issues within construction. And to address this, we need to reference that this is breathing in hazardous dust and fumes. We may also be asked a question of our understanding of the term Beaufort scale, and this is used to measure wind speed, which is very important when working at height. We may also be asked a question checking our understanding of when visitors are most likely to have an accident on a construction site. And to address this, we need to reference that this is when they first arrive or start work on a new site. We'll now take a look at a scenario-based question about what we would need to do if we were to find an injured person on site. And to address this, we would firstly need to assess the situation without putting ourselves in immediate danger. We would call the emergency services if the incident was serious, and we would need to raise the alarm and call for help, again without putting ourselves in immediate danger. We'll now take a look at some questions that fall under the RICS Ethics, Rules of Conduct and Professional Standards competency. And this is often regarded as a pass or fail competency, as any failure to answer an ethics question correctly will result in a referral of a RICS APC candidate. So obviously this is a very important competency where we need to allocate an appropriate level of time in order to revise. The first question we'll take a look at under this competency is, on receipt of a formal complaint from a client in writing, what would you need to do? And to address this, first of all, we can say that we would arrange a call with the client as soon as possible to notify them that you have received the complaint and are working to rectify the issues they are experiencing. We would also need to issue the client a copy of our firm's complaints handling procedure for reference, and we would also need to report the complaint with all relevant details to a senior person within the firm or designated complaints handler. We would then need to notify our firm's professional indemnity insurers in line with policy requirements. Following this, we would look to arrange a meeting with the client to take on board their feedback and address any areas of concern by introducing appropriate procedures if required. If we were unable to resolve the complaint, this would need to be referred to the RICS Independent Redress Mechanism. The next question we'll take a look at is, if a client was prepared to pay you in advance for services that you were providing, how would you ensure this was dealt with? And to address this, we would firstly need to say that we would set up a separate client account which is properly named and clearly identifiable with the word client within the account name. We would need to provide the client with a statement of account and also inform and agree any drawdowns going forward. Prior to drawing monies, we would also need to send a statement of how much money is being drawn down and what services are associated with this. We would also need to send an updated statement of account, and once complete, we would show a final statement ensuring that everything is complete and transparent. The next question we'll take a look at is testing our understanding of the difference between ethics and integrity. And to address this, we would say that ethics are the moral values that affect a person's behaviour or the conducting of an activity, whereas integrity is a quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. The next question we'll take a look at is, how can professional practices look to encourage ethical environments with high standards of integrity? And to address this, we could firstly reference that we would set up confidential whistleblowing procedures, we would raise awareness and provide CPD on ethical matters, we would become an RICS accredited practice, and we would establish monitoring of ethical performance within the organisation. The next question we'll take a look at is, what are the CPD requirements for MRICS members? And to address this, we can say firstly that RICS members need to record 20 hours of CPD per year. We'd need to achieve a minimum of 10 hours formal CPD within this time, and we'd also need to record CPD relating to the RICS professional and ethical standards during a rolling 3-year period. The next question we'll take a look at is, please provide some examples of matters you may refer to when using the RICS decision tree in order to seek guidance. And to address this, we could say that the RICS decision tree can be used in matters relating to receiving of gifts in a professional capacity, equal opportunities, whistleblowing, copyright and ownership, any conflicts of interest, charitable donations, and attendance at hospitality events. That brings us towards the end of the Q&A. I really hope you found this video useful, and please subscribe to this channel to receive ongoing APC support.